God's not a Democrat. He's not a Republican. And he's not an American. And so people are kind of shocked to think about that when you think about that.
Happy 4th of July, 250th anniversary of our country, and Insights with Marsha. So hopefully you will subscribe and like our channel. Backed by very popular demand is Dory Wiley. Dory, the last time you were here, we had well over 500,000 views. So Dory has the stories behind the stories. If you want to know something about history, he's going to make it fascinating and interesting. So here we are. We have made it 250 years. Later in the podcast, we'll talk about how most countries never even make it that long. But we've been celebrating the American Revolution, the Declaration of Independence, 250 years old. And sure enough, we start talking before the podcast, and Dory tells me that was the third, we had 3 revolutions. And most history teachers don't even realize it. So this is good. So tell us about it.
Well, Marsha, it's great to be back. I appreciate you. And happy birthday, America.
Yes.
And a lot of pressure for excitement and stuff. But this is the best topic, and I'm so excited about our 250th anniversary. I remember being excited as a kid about the bicentennial.
Me too.
And then if you go back to 1876, the centennial was just a massive celebration around the country. And so I hope people really take a minute to reflect on what we are, the accomplishments we've made, how amazing it is, the miracles behind it, and who we are, because that's the only way we can stay independent. But yeah, you mentioned third revolution. We were talking about that. We're English, right?
Yeah.
Now maybe not everybody in the country. We're really probably all mutts and mixes. I know that I am. But I've got some English background, mostly Scottish on the DNA.
Okay.
But as a country, we're English. We're a colony.
Right.
Okay. Well, the American Revolution was the third revolution in, call it, 125 years.
Okay.
In England.
Wow.
Now, most countries don't survive revolutions, okay? And usually what happens, even today in the last 100 years or whatever, if there's a revolution, look at Cuba, a tyrant takes over. If there's a revolution in Russia, they throw out the czars, another tyrant takes over, right? In China, a tyrant takes over, right? In the French Revolution, which is close to ours, Napoleon takes over, right?
Yeah.
So, but we went through 2 right before this revolution.
Huh.
And that's where we learned to do it correctly with a little divine intervention.
Yeah.
So if you look at 1649, where Charles I, he's executed, got his head cut off.
They like to cut off heads over there.
Cut
or
their
back
heads
then.
off. But pretty entertaining. He was not happy, but he was a tyrant.
Okay.
He was a tyrant. He was abusing the populace, overdoing his power. He dissolved Parliament for 12 years, and he was doing whatever he wanted, taking money from the wealthy, whatever,
Yeah.
But the people got tired of it, and they were led by a guy named Oliver Cromwell, who you may have heard of, but maybe not know the story. And he took over, and they cut his head off, and Oliver Cromwell was in charge. Now, the problem is he turned against the very parliament and movement that put him in, and he became a tyrant. So then they went back to a monarch.
Okay.
Reestablished the line. But then in 1688, it happened again.
Wow.
And King James II, not to be confused with the one that did the Bible, which was his grandfather, King James I, he becomes tyrannical. So obviously he doesn't learn very well. And so there's a movement by the noblemen to go get William, who was the husband of Mary, who was in the line, and say, hey, we'll support you. If you'll come in with an army, we'll give you a charge and we'll overthrow him. Well, King James finds about it, and he advocates basically and runs across.
He
didn't want to lose his head, so he runs across to France and he throws the Great Seal in the Thames River. Now, the Great Seal is you can't get anything done without the seal of the king, right?
Yeah.
So he throws it in the river, but a fisherman finds it, they pull it out.
No.
You go to the British Museum, you can see it today.
That's wild.
But so they move on. Now, the problem with both of those revolutions, there's some things that they learned, but some things they didn't learn. They didn't get right. One is they didn't know where their rights came from. Okay?
Yeah.
Who's in charge? And that's the problem with most revolutions. Okay, hey, you're doing all these wrong things, and now we're going to set up a new government, and but we don't know where our rights come from. Well, they come from people. Ask people today, where do your rights come from?
The government. That's what they'll say.
Or the consent of the governed, right?
Yeah.
Or the people. That's not what the founders believe.
Wow.
What do you mean? That's what it says in the Declaration of Independence. You need to read it a little closer. Human rights are endowed by their creator with a capital C. They come from God. And it's in all the legal books. And it was in Locke and it was in Montesquieu. And people like to term that a secular enlightenment. But it was very clear where rights came from.
Yeah. And
the founders got that. But they only got it because there was this movement of the Great Awakening for 20 years, from 1730 to 1750.
That's a long time.
Okay, so you had the Oliver Cromwell thing in 1649, 1650, 1688, King James, 1730 to 1750, the Great Awakening, and everyone starts to learn we're equal before God, right? Because you and I are not equal. LeBron James and I are pretty close in basketball, but I'd argue we're not equal. We're all equal before God. Yeah. That's what they were taught. That's what they started to learn. And then probably the most amazing thing, and I've been writing extensively on this, I'm amazing how much people really don't know about it, is the discourse of a sermon done in 1750 by a Boston minister in the West Church. He climbs into the pulpit on January 30th, 1750, and you adjust for the calendar and everything. It's the 100th anniversary of Charles I's beheading. And it was a national holiday. And the holiday the English had was you have to preach a sermon on Romans 13, right? Everything is the governments render under Caesar what is to Caesar's. That's what they used to establish the divine right of kings. That's what got Charles beheaded to begin with.
That's how come the king can tell you what to do over God.
Right. Even King James before Parliament, he's saying, hey, we are gods beneath God.
Oh, okay.
You know, he'd get laughed at, you know, if you did that today.
Yeah.
But that's how bad it was.
That's bad.
And so here you have a national holiday where every pastor is required to preach this sermon about Charles I being a martyr. And Jonathan Mayhew risks his life and gets in the pulpit as a 29-year-old congregational minister and says, no, rebellion to tyrants is obedience to God. And a 44-page sermon basically takes 6 hours to deliver, 3 messages. It's printed not just everywhere in the colonies, but in Britain for the next 26 years.
Wow.
It's a huge deal.
Yeah.
John Adams calls it his catechism for revolution. He says that sermon that he delivered, and he carried it everywhere with him to all the Continental Congress meetings, the debates on the Declaration, and all of them knew about it. Mm-hmm. And he says that sermon was the morning gun of the revolution.
Yeah.
That was the start.
Yeah.
And so, you know, we like to think all the founding fathers were students of history, but in a way it was recent history because this sermon goes through and talks about Romans 13, that you're a king or a leader is only a king and leader protected by God if he's teaching what God wants him to.
There you go.
He has to be godly. And if he's not, and he's a tyrant, then it's blasphemy. And he goes through and explains that. And then he takes it another step that it is the duty of Christians to take him out. I don't mean kill him, but I mean rebel against him.
Yeah.
Which is what they did. If you remember in the beginning, the founders, we petitioned, we discussed, we begged, everything was peaceful movement. Think Gandhi, think Martin Luther King. Yes, it was all done correctly in a very Christian way until they were attacked, right? And they declared independence. It was a peaceful independence.
Yeah.
And then they outlined the 27 reasons why the king was a tyrant. Now, here's why historians really don't cover this, because you're not going to find the exact language in the Declaration of Independence that you do in Mayhew's sermon, but you find the framework. He spent that whole sermon like a prosecutor does, and he lays out all the reasons why he's a tyrant and why he needed to be removed. And that framework is the exact same framework that Jefferson chose to write the Declaration of Independence.
So, like the thing that we're celebrating right now had his framework in Jonathan Mayhew's sermon.
Absolutely.
Is that?
There's no doubt about it.
Who knows that?
It came from the pulpit. In fact, there's not one idea in the Declaration of Independence that didn't emanate from the pulpit and the Great Awakening prior to 1763.
Wow. And we would have just sat there and been controlled by a king, believing that that was his right, that he was right there beneath, one step below God, and we wouldn't be a free country today. And we wouldn't have all these other countries trying to be like us. That's pretty heavy duty.
Well, and think about it. There's been, I can't remember, David Barton's done this kind of work. Some others have too, but a lot of countries have taken our Constitution and tried to adopt it. But it doesn't work because they're not a moral, religious people, and they don't understand where their rights come from. Unless they're willing to say, you are accountable to God, then it's not going to work. And all the founders were adamant about that, from Washington to Adams, Jefferson to Madison to all of them. And yet, part of the reason, I wrote an article for Ripon Forum recently, part of the reason why we don't get along in D.C. today is we can't have a basic agreement on who we are. It's not that the founders didn't fiercely debate. Oh, they did. They fiercely debated like crazy. But they had certain things that were untouchable. Our rights came from God, and we weren't going to be a mobocracy where the mob could rule that murder was good. Right?
Yeah.
And if you think your rights don't come from God and they come from people, then people it's no different than the democracy or mobocracy issue. The people can say, well, murder is good. And then you're like, okay, well, the people said that. So it's no difference. You have to come to that conclusion. And that's where the brilliance of Franklin came in from a secular point, where he said, if we're so bad with Christianity, imagine where we would be without it. He understood that there was a secular reason why we needed Christianity, because it gave an accountability issue to anyone in charge.
Yeah, they're accountable. Everybody's
you got to be accountable. And if you are in charge and you have a moral code, that's your conscience, you're accountable. The only thing that governs a man or a woman and their behavior at the end of the day is their conscience.
Yeah.
What do they do while they're alone? What is their character?
Yeah.
You and I don't.
Do they throw the trash out of the window on the highway?
Yeah, we don't have time to monitor all the congressmen or agencies or people in D.C.
Yeah.
We put them in office and hope they have a moral code and they're going to do the right thing.
Yeah.
And some of them do, and some of them don't.
Right.
But you have to acknowledge that. Once you kind of acknowledge that, which is what the founders did, they knew that there was something bigger than themselves. And that's what they presented for posterity. Okay. So now when people are in office, you go, do you have that mindset? Something bigger than yourselves? Where you're not taking from the government, you're not taking advantage of people, you're not stealing money, you're not doing programs just for your constituents, but it's something bigger than yourself. Are you Cincinnatus like Washington and going home to your farm afterwards and quitting when you could have been king?
Yeah. So when you explain that to me, that they get the country free and then they become the tyrant. And you were saying Washington could have easily become a tyrant.
Absolutely. No matter what we wrote, if he wanted to be king, a general in charge, he could have. He had that kind of support of the people.
Yeah.
And that's what was amazing to King George III.
Yeah.
He said, if he truly goes home, then he really is the greatest person that ever.
No.
It was amazing. And he did. He
Wow.
couldn't believe, they couldn't believe it in England. Why? Because Oliver Cromwell didn't do that. He gave in to the temptation of power. And, that's what kings are afraid of. That's what people in power are afraid of.
Yeah.
They're afraid they'll find them out and try them and cut their head off.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's crazy. Okay. So this is important to me, what all you're saying, because I'll think, well, we've lived longer than some of the teenagers today. Or right now, everybody's talking about socialism and that they want it. And we're like, the Soviet Union was a locked door when I was a kid. You couldn't come and go. And we saw the Berlin Wall torn down. We've lived that stuff. And the fact that they're thinking right now things like socialism is good, you just want to say, you're nutso. But they're not, they haven't lived long enough to know better. So.
Or they're uneducated.
They're uneducated. And so I think about how I love our country, but how I've seen it kind of doing some back steps. And it makes you think, well, what did we do in the beginning? We need to start thinking about how we did it. It's like if you had a really good I'm from Louisiana, a really good gumbo recipe. And 6, 7 years down the line, you're like, this gumbo's not that good. You'd be like, pull out Mama's original gumbo recipe and let's see what happened to it. And to me, this is so important to hear the original recipe if we want to keep things going, because it's been a pretty good ride.
Well, I'm a gumbo snob.
Are you really?
So if you make good gumbo, I need to know about it.
Okay.
And yes, and I love that analogy, because that's true. It just gets diluted, or people don't learn anymore, or they don't teach it in the schools anymore. And socialism is an easy, lazy sell.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Marsha.
Free everything.
You get everything free. Vote for me.
For it.
So it works good. Yeah. And so it takes someone with a little bit of imagination to kind of go, okay, well, where does that come from?
Yeah.
Right. And all it does is just take all the wealth out of the country. That's what Fidel Castro did.
Yeah.
And he pushes that. And of course, even the doctors and the lawyers and the highly educated professors, no one makes any money there. Everybody's poor. And, and they steal it at the government, and it's terrible. That happens under communism. And people say, well, that happens here too. Absolutely. But to a lesser extent.
Much less.
And that's not because we have a bad form of government. It's because we have some bad people executing it. We're not electing the right people. At the end of the day, we have no one to blame but ourselves. Mm. But I think if we look back, what's an interesting exercise is to go, well, what would the founders think of our government today, how far we are? Yeah. And I think there's some good and there's some bad. The good is like, wow, can't believe you made it 250 years.
I bet.
We were worried we were going to make it till next week. A lady asked Franklin that when he came out of the convention, when he's being carried out, by the prisoners because he had gout. He couldn't walk. And she said, well, what have you got? And he goes, well, republic, if you can keep it, and it was like, they understood how fragile it was because they understood the weakness of men.
Yes.
How they seduced by power.
Yeah.
And it takes humility to understand that. So if you think about that, okay, I was thinking about this today. If anyone besides Washington had been president, we might have had trouble, right? Mm-hmm. John Adams, who I think might have been the most honest founding father, he knew he had a massive ego.
Oh.
Right. But at the end of the day, he takes some positions that risk his second election, and he does, which is great.
Yes.
So he understood his weakness.
Yeah.
Jefferson probably even had a bigger ego. Huh. And he was willing to resort to terrible slander and whatnot against John Adams in order to get to office.
Wow.
Which we still have to this day.
Oh,
and I think the first 5 or 6 presidents, really understood that. So I think if they had seen if and when they saw Andrew Jackson, they kind of went, "Ooh, this guy's got the ability." He was like a king. They called him King Jackson. He had so much power, but he would have been nothing, absolutely nothing compared to, say, like a Franklin Delano Roosevelt or LBJ. I think the founders would have abhorred those two guys. Now, history regards them pretty good for what they've accomplished, but the power they wielded and how they wielded that power, they would have not been real happy with. But I think what the glaring thing is they would have noticed, oops, we didn't deal with these agencies, and we didn't see that. So all the agencies that have crept up are unaccountable because they tend to have the same people running them all the time, particularly, Department of Justice, Intelligence, CIA, ONI. It's not that we don't need those agencies, and it's not that they don't do good. They do, but they're unaccountable.
Yeah, you got to.
And they tend to do some things that shouldn't be done. And I think they would have been, oops, we messed that up.
Yes.
But wow, 250.
I know.
Amazing. That's a record in all of human history. And they would have had to be very proud of that.
Yes. So we have had the longest living standing government, you might.
This type for sure. First of its kind.
More than the Romans and all that kind of stuff.
Romans didn't make it.
Yes, we did it.
But the risk is no different than any other revolution. Still think of it as an ongoing revolution.
Yes, it is.
And that is, you have to understand where you come from because it's about self-governance. And the minute you forget where your rights come from and that it's subject to a moral code, you're going to lose your country. Maybe not that day, maybe not that week, maybe not next year, but it will, the original recipe of your gumbo is going to not work.
No roux.
The roux's messed up, it's burned, or it's too light. It's hard to.
I'm going to start with a different question for you.
Okay.
Before I ask this, I should have had all my facts straight, but I don't quite. But do you know anything about? I've heard that David Barton has helped put together a curriculum for teaching kids civics. And I want to say it's like kindergarten through 12th grade. And there's like 3 phases they've had to get it through to be in the Texas school system. And they're on the finish line for the last one. And they're hoping to use it around the country. Have you heard anything about that?
I haven't, but I'm going to go look it up. I'd like to see it.
Okay, yeah.
I think that would be really interesting. There's a balance, this fear of church and state thing.
Yeah.
But what they need to do is just teach it as is. It's like saying, well, the Pilgrims came over, but they didn't believe anything because we can't talk about it. Well, that's ridiculous.
Right.
Well, it's no different with the founders and how we're founded. We're clearly based on Christian principles and this. Now, if you want to change that, vote to change it, but don't change history because history is fact.
You can't change history. And that's what we've tried to do lately, which is one of those things that's like, okay, I see us getting a little off on the recipe. Let's think about where it came from. Okay, we're celebrating 250 years. Do you believe we're at another defining moment in our history?
Yes, I really do. And I think everyone who runs for office uses that phrase for the last 200 years.
Really?
So we're always at it.
Moment.
But, and it always seems that way every time you have an election. Oh, this is the most important election ever. This is the most important election ever. But I think it is because of this deterioration of a lack of knowledge of our history. Of who we are. And if you don't know who you are, then you don't know, or who you were, you don't know who you are, and you don't know where you're going. And I think that's really important. Every republic and democracy has failed in history, right? This is the longest standing one. History tells us you're doomed to fail. It's a matter of time. Not the most uplifting thought.
No.
Well, let's work at it.
Right.
Let's try to protect it as long as we can because otherwise, we're doomed to be ruled by a tyrant or something else that doesn't work. And then the people really, really suffer. And there's a whole lot less suffering in a country like this.
Yeah.
And it's not even close. It's not even close anywhere in history to what this country's been able to do. So that's kind of what I think this crossroads is pretty important. People need to, it's only in the last 10, 12 years where you could actually get up with a serious face and go, I'm a communist, I'm a socialist, I'm running for office. And you didn't get laughed off stage by the press and everyone else. Now the press and everyone supports it. Go for it.
Yeah.
You're great.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wow, that's a problem.
That's a problem. Yeah. So I know you've explained it before, but we could have some new listeners. I think if we went outside and polled people, I think 99% of the people think that in the Constitution it says there should be a separation of church and state.
Yeah, that's pretty sad. If you take the old Constitution from the USSR and ours and put them together, it says it in there, but not in ours. It says it in theirs.
How interesting.
Ours is freedom of religion.
Yeah.
It doesn't say anything about separation of church and state. It came from a letter to the Danbury Baptists when Jefferson was president, who were concerned about a Church of England or a Church of the United States of some denomination that wasn't Baptist. And Jefferson said, "Oh, don't worry about it. First of all, I'm not a constitutional scholar," which is a shock to most people. What do you mean? Because he wasn't there. He wasn't at the Constitutional Convention. He was in France. So he specifically says, I'm not a constitutional scholar or an expert. But you can rest assured, we have separation of church and state. We're not going to have a state-sponsored church like we did in England. Because part of the problem with King James II, who abdicated and left, is he was Catholic. Okay, and he was persecuting Protestants, which kept going back and forth all the time. Queen Mary and this, that, and the other. And they make up your mind. It started with King Henry VIII, right? Because he wanted to get a divorce from a wife and go, well, I'm not going to be Catholic anymore. We'll do something else so I can get a divorce and behead him. And then you get King James, the same thing. He's Catholic. And so they're thinking, well, one of his daughters will take over and they're both Protestant and we'll be okay. Then he has a son. So that's when they made the deal and he abdicated or ran away. So this fight over religion just goes on and on and on. And these are two Christian religions, which, doesn't make any sense. It's kind of silly when you think about it now. We figured out how to make a little peace with that.
Okay. If the founders could leave us one message today, what do you think it would be?
I think it's what I've been working on. And that is, it's not just knowing about the July the 4th and that we're free and that we left England. And it's that, where did the ideas and thoughts and the Declaration of Independence come from? And why? Why is it set up that way? So if you look at the motto for out of one is many.
Yes.
Right? E pluribus unum.
Thank you.
There was a huge debate about this.
Yeah.
And that sounds great. It's a Roman model from a poem, and it's terrific. We got 13 colonies. We're one. That's all great. But it doesn't tell you why. You know what tells you why? The motto that Franklin proposed and that Jefferson got behind and Adams got behind, and they got outvoted. That motto was rebellion to tyrants is obedience to God.
I like it.
That is the why. And it sounds quite harsh. It sounds violent, but it's rebellion, not revolution. It's the duty.
Yeah.
The whole thing is your rights come from God. Tyrants are subordinate to it. Kings are subordinate to it. And you have the ultimate responsibility to deal with that at the end of the day. And it's all captured in that phrase, which is amazing because they wanted that for the Great Seal of the United States.
Wow. The one that's like with President talks.
Yep. Franklin proposed the Moses with his staff, the parting of the Red Sea. Jefferson wanted pillar by fire leading the Israelites, all in this very religious, right?
Yeah.
Very big message of God's deliverance and duty of what to do.
Mm-hmm.
And it got outvoted, which is a shame. We should talk about the flag.
Yes, tell me about it.
So people don't realize that was a very common American Revolution flag.
Mm-hmm.
A series of 13 in Pennsylvania carried around in it, and it had this rebellion to tyrants, obedience to God. It's a beautiful flag. Now, a lot of people think, oh, well, the Betsy Ross flag and this, that, and the other.
Yeah.
But, there's not a lot of historical evidence that ever was there.
Really?
And if it was very late in the war. And in fact, no one even knew about her doing that until her grandson came up in 1870, right?
Yeah.
Almost 100 years later, and says, oh, yeah, my grandmother made this flag for George Washington, and this is what it looked like.
Oh, my God. How we mess up history.
Yeah, so the truth, or I won't say the truth, let's just say the direction of more evidence that we have all the way back to veterans who have Ben Lossing, the historian who wrote about it, is, I think way more interesting.
Yeah.
This rebellion to tyrants is obedience to God. And the story I told you about Jonathan Mayhew, that's a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
That tells us the why. So that gets back to your original question. What do they want us to know?
Mm-hmm.
We want you people to know why. We may or may not have set up the perfect system. We set up a system. It needs care and feeding and watering. And as Jefferson said, at times it needs blood. It's its natural fertilizer or manure.
Yeah.
If you know the why, you can keep it.
Yeah. That's good. That's really good. Okay. How many signers were there to the Declaration, and how many of them had gone to seminary?
Over half went to seminary. There were 56 of them.
Whoa.
One of them, Jonathan Witherspoon, was the head of Princeton.
Wow.
And he taught a third of the Founding Fathers. Now, Founding Fathers, not just the signers, but it included guys in the Constitutional Convention.
Oh, yeah.
Early political guys. He taught a lot of them. And he was very adamant that you could not hold office unless you not only were a Christian, but you had a professed faith and belief in Jesus Christ.
Wow.
In fact, the motto that he had at Princeton was, "Cursed is all learning that is contrary to the cross of Christ." I'm pretty sure they don't carry that as a motto anymore at Princeton.
Pretty sure too.
That's just historical fact. We ought to find that interesting. Okay, wow, because that helps just kind of cement the theological and political thought underwritings of the revolution of what happened.
To me, it's getting back to the original gumbo. I want this country to stay the way it was. So how did we get there? Okay, I got a couple more. What made America's founding so unique compared to other nations? And I think you've already said it, but say it again.
I think it's how the humility that all the guys brought to the table once they realized that all their rights came from God. Then they realized that the biggest problem in the room was them. We have seen the enemy, and the enemy is us.
Wow.
It's not the king. It's us. Now, they may not have said that, but that's what the result was.
Yeah.
And I think they did say that, if you think about it. How is, well, if I become in power and I become king, then we're no better than we were before.
Yeah.
Or if you do, or whatever. And so, George Washington had a tremendous amount of pride and ego. It had to be quite a bit for him to not, and you can imagine how well loved he was. And it had to be very difficult for him to step down. Think about these baseball players or basketball players or whatnot that have been playing their whole lives, how hard it is for them to retire. Why? Because fame is fleeting. Yeah. Glory is fleeting, and they want that forever. Yeah. Well, it's even more when you're king or you're the leader of a country.
George Washington led the whole army.
Hard, and they realized that was in there. Therein lies the danger. We have to have a system of checks and balances where everything is accountable. The system and the people.
I get it. Okay. History doesn't repeat itself exactly. It only rhymes. To me, sometimes it kind of repeats it exactly. What parallels do you see between 1776 and today as far as history repeating?
Well, that's really interesting. I do see a frustrated populace with the government with record debt, out of control, record corruption, record unaccountability.
Yes.
So if you were Thomas and I were Thomas Jefferson and John Adams, okay? You be Thomas Jefferson, I'll be John Adams. I'm a big ideal guy, but you're a fantastic writer, better than I am. And you're from Virginia, and everybody likes you, and I'm a jerk.
Okay.
Which is
Thanks for giving me the good role.
Which is exactly the pitch John Adams made to Jefferson for him to write the Declaration of Independence.
I love that.
So we're going to do that. And if we did that today, what would we see in those parallels? I think some of those parallels would be we could list out 27 grievances, just like he did against the king. Taxation without representation, quartering, using the military where you're not supposed to, doing things where you're not supposed to, unaccountability, using the court system without legal precedent against your enemies. There's all kinds of things. And it's funny you should say that. I've thought about writing a satirical piece.
Oh, yeah.
And doing that. The problem I have with it is it sounds so revolutionary. You're kind of like, I don't really want to start a revolution here. I just want to fix what we have here, make us think about it. But at the same time, if we go back to Jonathan Mayhew's speech, we may not could point to a person, but we could point to power and government being very tyrannical. Then if you're a Christian, you have a duty to do so, and to not do so is evil itself.
Yeah.
You remember who else said that in the 40s?
No, who?
Trying to think of his name. Who was the theologian in Germany that rebelled against one of them against Hitler?
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Okay, a theologian.
But anyway, that's why they were all killed. He was killed.
Yes.
But they were they were preaching the same thing, and to be silent in the face of evil was the quote, is evil itself.
Yeah.
I'll think of his name in a minute. It'll come to me when I'm not thinking so hard.
Back to President Washington for a minute. There's a new movie out.
Yes, Young Washington.
Young Washington.
I've seen a preview with the head of Mount Vernon. It's a fantastic movie, very entertaining, and it's great. And it goes all the way up to, the General Braddock and French and Indian War, the miracles of him surviving that.
Yeah.
The Young Washington is a handsome, debonair guy. You'll be very proud that he is a father of your country. You've got to go see it. It's a wonderful movie.
Okay.
They did a good job.
All right. Let me see if I have one or two more here that I think are good, because so far these have been pretty good little questions. What are the warning signs that great civilizations begin to decline?
That's a really good question. Being a finance guy, I kind of start with finance. Once they get really incredibly in debt, then that tends to spiral out of control. And once every democracy has failed because the people vote themselves all the money, kind of like socialism and whatnot. And when they do, they go broke and they fail. And we've done a lot of that, like drunken sailors, which, was one of the warnings that we had in Washington's farewell address. Don't do that. He addressed all these. The farewell address is a great model for us to get back to.
Yeah.
Don't meddle too much in foreign affairs, be honorable. Don't let the government get too big. don't, be a moral, virtuous people, be accountable, don't spend too much. All these warnings, and they used to teach them in school, but because many of the warnings were religious in nature, they quit teaching it. But I think that some of the bigger warning signs are uncontrollable debt and unaccountability at every single level.
That's I agree.
So there's a lot of theft on the debt, not just here, but abroad. Countries around the world are stealing billions and trillions of dollars from us because people are for sale. Washington used to say, few men have the character to withstand the highest bidder, and that's a big problem.
And that was even back then.
Even back then.
Wow. Okay, I have a few more fun questions before we close. Should America spend this anniversary celebrating, reflecting, or repenting, or all three? Celebrating, reflecting, repenting.
All of the above. All of the above. And the founders told that. The first thing that John Adams did is he wrote this wonderful letter to his wife. He said, this is a wonderful celebration that we should have fireworks and parties and blah, blah, blah. And July 2nd will be celebrated forever. And he got the date wrong. It was July 4th. Because they agreed on the 2nd, and then they voted on the 4th, and then they signed in August. And so really, the signing of the Declaration of Independence is August.
Birthday.
So, hopefully we're celebrating the right day.
Yeah.
But when you get back to the repenting and the paying, I think about his son, John Quincy Adams, who used to make speeches about it, and Daniel Webster, and every politician used to all the time, so that we would not forget.
Yeah.
But I think about a speech that John Quincy Adams made later in his career at Newburyport, Massachusetts, where he says, why is it next to the birthday of the Savior that July 4th is so celebrated? Could it not be that it's such an important day of the dispensation and spreading of the gospel? Something to that effect.
Yeah.
I'm trying to use his words. And he goes through, this whole speech talking about how important America is as a witness to the world. And if you think about it, other than Paul, what has done more to spread the gospel in American and world history than the United States?
Yes.
And so if you are a believer, and you take that another step farther, God's not a Democrat. He's not a Republican. And he's not an American.
Yeah.
And so people are kind of shocked to think about that when you think about it that way. And the minute that the country is not useful to him,
yes,
in spreading the word of his son and Jesus Christ and saving souls, will he support it? And that's got to be an interesting reflection for us to think about. So this repentance and thankfulness and rededication, I think from a Christian point of view, is very important.
I think you just nailed it. That's the question of all questions. We certainly want to continue to be needed by the Creator of the whole universe. Whoa. Well, Dory, you always amaze me. Not only are you president and CEO of Commerce Street Holdings.
Yes.
And you speak on CNBC, Fox Business. There's another network you're good
Bloomberg?
at. Bloomberg. And the first time I said you were a great at assassinations. No, you're all of American history and the presidents, and you always have the best stories.
Well, don't you? And you can probably tell when we talk about the assassination, it's not quite as uplifting. This is an uplifting.
This is a fun one.
This is a fun one. How could you not be inspired by it? It's great.
Yes.
We are truly blessed, and it's fun to learn about our history and who we are and how successful we are, and take the time on July 4th to celebrate that and thank God for it.
Yeah. So I'm having a feeling that you guys are not having gumbo today, but maybe some ribs, some baked beans, potato salad, some good stuff like that. So Dory and I hope y'all all have a wonderful 4th of July. Celebrate it and think a lot about it, because this is the biggie. The biggie. And there's a lot of us that won't be around for another 50 years worth, So enjoy it, and happy 4th of July.